This is Caspian's week 1 video recap. So the very first thing that we teach all of the puppies is a reward marker. So a reward marker lets the puppies know when they got a behavior correct, and it will always be followed by a piece of food. So for this, we're going to be using a clicker. The very first thing we're going to do with Caspian is charge our clicker. So when we're first starting to use this as our reward marker, he doesn't know what it means. So when we are charging our clicker, we are just making sure that he understands that association between hearing the click and getting a piece of food. So during this exercise, I'm not going to be asking Caspian for any behaviors. I'm just going to click my clicker once and then give him a piece of food. And we'll do this maybe 3-4 times at the beginning of each training session. So again, I want him to have that really solid association between hearing the click and then getting that piece of food. So clicking once and then giving him that piece of food, waiting a couple seconds, making sure he's done eating that piece of food before we do it again. So I just want to make sure when I'm charging my reward marker, my clicker, that I'm not capturing any undesired behavior. So right now he's sitting, so this is the perfect time for me to click. I would just want to avoid clicking if he's jumping or pawing or anything like that. We don't want to unintentionally mark a bad behavior. Okay, so we've gone through this maybe 4 times now. Good job, buddy. Good job. Okay. Right from here, we're going to move into following a food lure. So food luring is a really common way that we can teach our puppies different things, whether we're working on a sit or a down, or we're working on heel position as they get a little bit older. But before we can use food luring to teach our dog a new position, we need to make sure that they're good at following a food lure. So when I'm using a food lure, I will hold it flat in my hand with my thumb, and my palm is going to face the dog. I want them essentially licking this piece of food the whole time, almost like a fishing lure. I want them staying connected to my hand the entire time. So all we're going to do with Caspian to start is I'm going to take a few steps, and I want him to move with me, staying connected to my hand that whole time. So showing him the food, I'm going to take a couple steps. He moves with me, marking and then releasing that piece of food to him. I'll show that to you again. So holding it flat in my hand, palm is to his face so he can lick it. I'm going to get him to turn here. We're just taking a few steps together, clicking, and then releasing that food just by moving my thumb out of the way, and then he can eat it. We've also been pairing this exercise with his name to start to work on some name recognition. So I'm going to do the same thing, but this time as we're moving, I'm also going to say his name. Caspian. Good boy. Caspian. Okay. And then I also like to practice this with both hands. So now I'm going to switch my clicker hand and my food hand. I want to make sure he's comfortable following a food lure, whether it's in my left or my right hand. Caspian. Caspian. What a good boy. Okay, we'll do one more here. Caspian. Good boy. Very nice. Okay, right from here, we're going to move into hand targets or our touch command. So for this big picture end goal of this behavior is that we bring our hand down nice and flat, we cue our dog touch, and they come over and hit our hand or target our hand with their snout. So this can kind of be used as like an informal recall. If we need to get our dog to come over to us and they're really good at playing touch, we could use it in that way. We could also use it as a nice engagement game to keep our dog connected to us, maybe if there's something distracting going on. So to start to teach this behavior, it's going to be pretty similar to how we started with that food luring exercise. So I'm going to hold the food flat in my hand. I'm going to put it right up to Cassian's snout, let him start to lick it. But this time, instead of having him stay connected, I'm just going to quickly bring my hand back, cue him touch, and then when he reconnects with my hand, that's when I'm going to mark and reward him. So showing him the food, touch. Good boy. Again, holding it flat in my hand, letting him start to lick it first, and then quickly pulling my hand back. Touch. Good boy. And same thing with this. I want to practice with both hands. I want to make sure that he's able to do a hand target, whether the food's in my right or my left hand. So we're going to do that same thing. Touch. Good boy. Nice job, Caspian. Okay, we're going to do one more. Touch. Good boy. Good job, buddy. Right from here, we're going to move into our first stationary position, which is sit. So for this, since this is brand new to him this week, I am going to use a food lure to lure him into position. As soon as his butt hits the floor is when I'm going to mark with my clicker and then reward him with a piece of food. So when I'm teaching stationary positions, I do like to start to work on duration right off the bat, because then eventually, as he gets older, we can develop this into a sit-stay behavior. So once he's in that sit position and I mark and reward him, I'm going to give him a few follow-up cookies for staying in position before I release him out of position. So something else I'm going to go over before we get into sit is a release cue. So a release cue lets our puppies know when they're done doing a behavior, they can get out of that position or they can move away from us. So for Caspian, we're using okay. So to start to teach him what that means, I'm going to show him a piece of food. I'm going to say okay and toss it away. And then he can go and chase and consume it. So we're going to do that a few times and then we'll do that sit. So showing him the food, okay. We'll do one more. Okay. Good job, buddy. All right, so now we're going to move into our sit, and that's where you're going to see that okay come into play here. So I have my clicker ready. He's already in a sit, so I'm just going to move around to encourage him to get up here. And then I'm going to use a piece of food to lure him. Sit. So marking and rewarding as soon as his butt hits the floor, making sure he's not pawing at me while I give him that food, giving him a follow-up cookie. Okay, using that as my release cue to let him out of position. I'll show that one to you again. Sit. Good boy. So a couple follow-up cookies for maintaining that sit position. Okay. Nice job, buddy. We'll do that one again. Caspian, sit. Good boy. Okay. Okay, we're going to do one more here. What a good man. Caspian, sit. Good boy. And maybe sometimes he'll get one follow-up cookie, sometimes he'll get 3. Okay, I will vary it up a little bit each time. Good job, buddy. Very nice. Okay. The next thing that we started to work on is getting him dressed, meaning getting his collar on and off. So a lot of times what happens with our puppies when we go to put their collar on or take it off is we reach in to unhook or unclasp their collar and they start like nibbling on our hands. So the easiest way to do this is I have food in my hand. I'm going to show it to Caspian, let him start to lick it, and then I'm going to find the buckle on his collar while he's licking that food, and then I can unclip it and give him that piece of food. Okay? And then similarly, when I'm going to put this on him, I will show him those couple pieces of food, and I'll drop them on the floor, and then as he's eating it off the floor is when I'll clip that collar on. So if you're doing this on a slippery floor, I don't know if you can see, he pushed the food across the floor and then kind of started to chase it. You could certainly, put it like between your feet so that it can't slip behind, or an easier way might be to practice that on like carpeted flooring. Good job, buddy. Okay, right from here, we're going to move into our magic mat. So let me find our mat here. So our magic mat is a stationing skill where, big picture end goal, we tell our dogs to go to their mat, they find their way over to it, they settle into a down position, and they stay there until we release them. That is a lot of behaviors to ask of a puppy. So we're going to break it down. So in week 1, our goal is to build up the value of them being on the mat. So in week 1, I don't care what position he's in while he's on the mat. I just want all 4 feet on the mat. So I'm going to lay the mat down. I'll lure him over with some food. As soon as all 4 paws are on it, I'll click. And then I'm going to put the food right down on the mat to reward him instead of feeding from my hand. Because eventually when we shape this into that down behavior, if he learns that the food's going to happen on the mat, he'll be more likely to stay in that down position. So I'm just going to set that expectation right from the start. So the other thing I'm going to do is between each repetition, I'm going to move the mat this week. So you won't always move the mat, but we do this in week 1 because we want to create some excitement around this mat skill. We almost want Caspian to be like seeking out the mat, right? So after I release him and I move the mat, I want him being like, where's the mat? And what you should start to see after you do several repetitions of this is that he will seek out that mat before I have an opportunity to really lure him to go back to it. So in week 1, I'm not worried about calling this mat because right now he doesn't know what that means. I'll worry about naming it once he's doing that behavior pretty consistently. So I'm going to lay the mat down here. I'm going to bring him over to it with some food. Once all 4 paws are on is when I'm going to click. And then I'm going to drop food on here one at a time. Maybe 3 or 4 in a row. And then I'm going to use that release cue. Okay. And toss it away. And then I'm going to move the mat to a new spot. Good boy. So you can see as soon as I put it down, he came over to it and started looking down. It's exactly what we want. Okay. I'm going to move it again. Okay. So you can see he's making his way back to it really before I have an opportunity to lure him. What a good boy. Okay. You don't have to move the mat really far. Good boy. If they happen to offer you a sit or a down this week on the mat, that's fine. Just roll with it. But my only criteria is all 4 paws on there for week 1. Okay. What a good boy. Okay. We'll do one more here. What a smart boy. Okay. And then for this first week, when I'm not actually working on this mat skill with the puppies, I will put the mat away because we're working really hard on building up the value of them being on it. If we leave it out all the time right off the bat and they're going over to it and we're not rewarding them, it's going to start to lose its value. So we want to make sure, again, just when they're initially learning this, that we put it up and away when we're not actually working on the skill with the dogs. Good job, buddy. In week 1, we started to work on some body handling with Caspian. So he's going to need a lifetime of vet care and potentially some grooming as well. So we want to make sure that he's comfortable and confident with being handled starting now at a very young age. So this week we're going to be working on some light restraint and then handling paws, ears, tail, and potentially his mouth and his eyes, okay? So for this, I want to make sure that he's on a piece of food first before I do the handling, because if I go to work with one of his body parts and I don't have him on food first, he might kind of like turn towards my hand and start nibbling on me thinking that I'm playing with him. And I also want to make it a positive experience, so we're going to pair it with food. So we'll start with some light restraint. So I'm getting Caspian licking a piece of food, getting him into a standing position, and then I might pet him a few times, but then I'm going to take my hand and slip it underneath his belly. Yes, good boy. Okay, so you'll commonly see this one at the vet, maybe when they're taking a temperature or administering vaccinations. But again, just getting him used to me slipping my hand underneath his belly. So he's licking that piece of food, petting him a few times, and then slipping my hand underneath his belly here. Yes, good boy. So when my hand's underneath his belly, I am not lifting him up. I'm not putting heavy pressure on. I'm just getting him used to me slipping my hand underneath his tummy there. Good job, buddy. For handling his ears, we'll do that next. With this, I just want to get a good peek in his ears, right? So, especially because he is pretty furry and he has floppy ears, we want to check his ears regularly, making sure that they're clean, that he's not getting ear infections, all that good stuff. So for this, kind of similar, I'm going to, instead of going right in and reaching for an ear, I'm going to pet him a few times first on his head, and then I'll flip an ear back. Okay, so showing him that food, couple pets here, and then flipping back that ear. Yes, giving him that piece of food. Good boy. Good job, buddy. We'll do the other ear. Yes, good boy. Okay, we're going to move on to his tail. So similar with his tail, I'll start by petting him a couple times first before I lift his tail up. Yes. So with this, not pulling on his tail, not adding a ton of pressure, just gently lifting it. Yes, good boy. Good man. Okay, when we're working with paws, same thing. I don't like to go right in and reach for a paw right off the bat. I will start at either his shoulder blade or his hindquarters, slide my hand down, and then handle his paw a little bit. So let me see if I can get him a little bit closer to me. Hey, bud. Okay, so starting up at his shoulder, bringing my hand down, and then just gently lifting his paw. Yes, good boy. If you're working with a hind leg, try your best to get him in a standing position. Yes. What a good boy. Here, bud. Good boy. Whoop. Yes. And that's okay if they sink into a sit. Just try your best to get them standing for those back legs there. Yes, what a good boy. And then for handling his eyes, it's really his eyelids. So same thing, I'm going to kind of pet him a few times, and then I'm just going to gently pull up his eyelids so I can get a good look at his eye. Yes, good boy. And then for his mouth, same thing, I'm going to pet him first, but I'm just going to lift up his lips so I can take a look at his gums. Yes, good boy. Good job, buddy. That is it for Caspian's week 1 video recap. Make sure you're looking at your video library as well as your handouts. Those will give you much more detailed information on all the skills we worked on in week 1.